My name's Eddie Winters. You're tuned into the rock and roll coup d'etat. What you're listening to right here is Tav Falco and the Panther Burns off of his brand new record, Command Performance. And I'm excited. We've been talking about it all morning long. We have a very special guest on the program, on the line today. It is none other than Tav Falco. Tav, welcome to the program.
Eddie Rock Eddie. Yeah, it's the groove. Eddie, is this the coup d'etat?
Baby, it is.
We're going to have a coup d'etat.
Wait, we're gonna try, baby. We're gonna.
It's underway.
We're gonna keep it legal, but nonetheless, Tav, it is such an honor and a pleasure to have you on the program. I know you've been just crazy busy. You just wrapped up a U.S. tour. You've got a new record out. You've got a photography book out. And I'm excited about all of it. First off, how was this tour? How was the U.S. tour treating you?
Oh, really well. We gigged every night for 3 weeks with one travel day from Tucson to Las Vegas. And we like to stay busy when we get out and start playing. So I don't like days off. We had a smooth run, and coast to coast, New York to San Francisco. Then we finished up yesterday with the book reading of my new book in Berkeley at the Octopus Literary Salon in Berkeley. And we did about 2 hours over there presenting this book of photographs, an iconography of chance, 99 photographs of the Evanescent South, representing my early work in photography. I have 3 books that I'm going to do in photographs. The first in the Troika is my early work in black and white, hardcover edition. And my second book will be my color work. And the third in the triptych will be my new work.
And you were presenting the 99 photographs. Let's talk about that book, because it represents a certain a period and time in your life. What was that like, putting this book together? And can you talk a little bit about the subject matter that you're representing in this book?
Well, this book came about through a process of association, which actually started during my tenure in Paris, which was a few years ago. Yeah, for a few years. And it started with an exhibition that I was contacted to do from the Juan Miró Foundation in Mallorca and the Phone Art organization in Mallorca. They wanted to somehow heard about my pictures, which had never been shown before, never been codified into an exhibition.
Right.
And so they did this. They had my original negatives that I had selected, printed by an archival printer in Hamburg, Germany. And then they framed them in Mallorca, and they launched the exhibition in 2009. That was 50 photographs, an iconography of chance.
Right.
And so from there, oh, by the way, they also brought in my short films.
Of course.
Which are now archived in the Cinémathèque Française. We had an evening of those, which were screened at the auditorium at the Juan Miró Foundation, next to his studio.
Wow.
The former studio of Juan Miró. And not only that, Eddie, they brought the Panther Burns into a theater in the middle of the island for a concert.
Is that right?
For the first time, all facets of my oeuvre were presented.
Wow.
And this was something I didn't solicit. It was something that came out through a process of association in Paris. Then in 2012, the Ogden Museum in New Orleans brought this exhibition to America. And they presented it there. And the same trip, they had my films showing in a loop in a little environmental box in the museum. Then the exhibition was up for 3 months. And they brought Panther Burns in for the vernissage to perform in the museum
Wow.
at Lee Circle in the limestone building of the Museum of the Confederacy, right there at Lee Circle.
Wow, what an
So that
honor.
was exciting. And then the book began to come out and be thought of and conceived as a product of that exhibition at the Ogden. So the publisher of my first book, Ghost Behind the Sun, Splendor, Enigma, and Death, Mondo Memphis, Volume 1,
Right.
Creation Books, that came out in 2012, too, by the way. No, 2011 in USA, 2012 in Europe on Creation Books. They began to think that they wanted to bring out a book of my photographs, too. So we worked on that about 3 years, and I designed the book. It's in hardcover. I designed the layout of the book, the contents. It's the preface. I wrote a preface during a sojourn in Paris. The Spanish photographer in Madrid, Alberto Garcia Alex, wrote the prologue, and I wrote captions for each picture.
Right.
And the text of the entire book appears in 4 languages: English, German, French, and Spanish.
Wow.
And I gave the first book presentation last night in Berkeley at Octopus Literary Salon in Oakland. It was in Oakland.
In Oakland, California,
And
yes.
That's it. And that went down very well. Research magazine was there. V-Veil from Research
Right.
Survival Laboratories was there, and they were filming the presentation for the screening program. And it was an exciting assemblage of underground and aficionados interested in photography and in the movements of Tav Falco over the past few decades. Yeah, someone just said in the van here, we're traveling down from Berkeley now to Southern California. Mike Watt is at the helm here.
Is that right?
He was saying something that somebody just told him, well, this is not punk, it's art.
Right.
So, yeah, maybe it is art. Or maybe what I do is like from the beginning, art damage.
It is. I mean, in combining these different mediums, be able to do the photography and showing just a giant dichotomy of this world that no one's seen through your eyes, and being able to,
like we were discussing in the van here, and I mentioned at the presentation last night, all of my work is really one song and one persona. The music, the films, the photographs, these are the areas in which I work. It's one song, one persona, but with many different faces.
Right.
And that's what we just touched on in our discourse in the boat of Mike Watt as we're sailing down to Southern California.
I wanted to ask the tour that you've just completed, titled the Whistleblower Tour. And this is, I mean, like you were saying, a full U.S. tour, coast to coast. Can I ask you, with the Whistleblower Tour, it has obviously a political overtone to it. Is the political state of, say, the United States, was that an influence going into this tour as far as musically making a statement?
Well, that stance is reflected. Our stance is reflected on the new album, Command Performance.
Yes.
In 2 songs, Whistleblower and Doomsday Baby, about the massacre in Gaza. And the fact that the United States is in large part backing the unbridled aggression of the Israeli government against the Palestinians.
Right.
and as they have been doing since its artificial state was propped up by the British after the war. So the British in America they're guilty as much as the Israelis. We got blood on our hands. You understand it?
Exactly, baby.
And I'll tell you, it ain't the first time. But now, like the song says, the whistleblower, a man must stand to expose their lies. You can't act dumb while their victims' cries are choked with rifle butts and your apathetic sighs.
Absolutely.
Leadership is responsible for the crimes they commit. They can pin medals on themselves, but they're guilty every bit. The whistleblower knows it ain't a pretty thing blowing the whistle on the intelligence machine.
It's
that's the way it is.
It is the way it is, and it's a beautiful insight. Actually, I mean, to be honest with you, I mean, a lot of this behavior has gone on for years, and tackling that with such authoritarian, a mirror holding it up to the government is kind of what you're doing. It's kind of in a sense, you've been doing it, for years. And how with this project, with putting the record together and putting this tour together, how did this assemble? How did that arrive in your soul? And you said that you had to get this out. How did that come about?
Yeah, well, I'm a product of the turbulent 60s.
Sure.
And the America I grew up in until our involvement in the Vietnam War was a different world. What noble sentiments we had, what we stood for in terms of, like the French, equality, fraternity, liberty, has eroded away since the Vietnam War in front of everyone's eyes. We don't need wars to create jobs for people in
Correct.
This country. We have abundance, but we've abused it. We've abused it through greed and hypothetical financial instruments on Wall Street. Greed, greed, greed. The unbridled market is doing us in and has compromised the moral fabric of this country. I live in Vienna now.
Right.
Once a hotbed for Nazis after the monarchy. Well, actually, after the monarchy in Vienna, Vienna became socialist for 10 years. It was called Red Vienna.
Right.
And then the fascists came in and took them out, okay? But things have changed since the Third Reich. Now in Europe, we have more democratic parliaments, institutions, governments than we have in America. I'll take my chances with the refried Nazis over there than I will over here now. We've got more of a police state in America than we do in the former Third Reich countries.
I have to agree with
you.
you.
And I mean, the neo-Nazis are over here headquartered in Lincoln, Nebraska, man. That's where the world headquarters is now. It's not in Germany anymore.
And it's also, I mean, as history has shown, there's post-World War II. I mean, a lot of these Nazis and other people who are associated with them have embedded themselves into our governmental system, and it does seem that it has grown over the last, say, 50 years to a fever pitch, a Orwellian kind of prophecy.
Well, there's always a fascist element afoot, no matter where you are.
Right.
You could be in, and in fact, some leftist governments become fascist. Look at Stalin.
Right.
I mean, he was just as fascist as the Third Reich, you know, and they positioned themselves against each other. You know, the Third Reich and the Red Army and all of this, it was just one totalitarian government against the next. The Russian Revolution was compromised in 10 years. That went right into the toilet. Okay, you always have to be careful. Right now in France, you've got a very heavy national front over there trying to gain, you know, ascendancy. Same in Austria. You have the Freedom Party, the FPO. So you just have to stay on your toes. You know, Italy, you know, they invented fascism in the modern world.
Right.
Of course, there's a very heavy leftist movement in Italy too. But, you know, I'm outside of all that, man. I'm personally a utopian anarchist.
Sure.
If I'm anything, I don't trust any of these governments. We don't need them.
Right.
They're just in there. They don't really protect you. And what they do protect is they protect you in the degree in which they can enslave you into the system. And there's more slavery going down today than we had in the subtle forms, I think, before the Emancipation Proclamation.
Right.
Even more. Look at our prison systems. It's neo-slavery today, the privatization of prisons. They got prisoners in there doing all kinds of work now for peanuts. And I'm talking about technological work, communications. The more people they can put in the prisons now, the more these prison corporations can reap a profit. We got to wake up. It's time to wake up and balls up and take a good look at yourself.
Right.
America, take a good look. You're poisoning your people. You're exploiting your people. And the legacy you're leaving, and all of this hollow rhetoric, the legacy you're leaving to your people is radioactive poison. It's filth.
Tav, do you
There's
see...
no justification. It's the elite versus you're dumbing down the masses to prop up the elite. And, you know, we can stay up here as musicians and be an entertainer and entertain the people and make sensual music and sexual innuendo.
Right.
and march on with the rich pageantry of rock and roll and jazz and blues and tango and embrace each other. But there's something not quite complete about that. You have to look at everything here. You have to look at the whole picture. It's not just art for art's sake anymore.
It's got a deeper meaning.
That. I'm not saying what you express, there's a mandate to make a message out of it.
Right.
But a part of it, for me, I can't be silent anymore. And nobody's going to listen to me and my perspective unless I use my tools.
Right.
And my tools of expression is music. And anti-music, and film and anti-film, and art and anti-art.
Right.
And that's what I use, and that's what I'm going to use, and that's what I'm going to do. And I'll go down doing it.
And it is the most dangerous tools to use against the establishment. And you know, I was going to say, I mean, from your perspective, living outside of America, looking at it and being obviously you have a lot of connections growing up in America and seeing it evolve. Do you see what the state of our country in which it's moving into? Do you see an end, and do you see a positive ending or a bleak one?
The only positive movement I see afoot was the Occupy movement.
Right.
Which was not understood, of course, by the media, because it's more of a state of mind than an actual platform like we had in the 60s with the Yippies and other the Weathermen and various groups. And, of course, the individuals who have stood up. If there's any if there can be a hero in today's world, in today's postmodern, post-existential existence that we move through. They're the whistleblowers, and they're anonymous. These are the only things, and these are defensive movements, except the whistleblowers are giving us information and revealing that which the American people need to know about. It's like the Doors said, they got the guns, but we got the numbers.
Right.
And when America wakes up to that and figures out that a good price at the gas pump does not justify the destruction of Iraq by the Bush administration in the name of Jesus Christ.
Right.
And all the other fundamentalists he sold that invasion to. That's obsolete, man. That whole war thing he did was obsolete. It put us in the hole. It cost us billions of dollars. It lined the pockets of Bush's Yale cronies that he barely got through college there. He's a flunky, man. People behind him are pulling the strings.
Of
the
course.
Carlyle Corporation, Halliburton, all these big corporate fags, you know.
Right.
Sucks. And America thinks, okay, I got 2 cars in the garage. Everything's okay. It ain't okay. It ain't okay. You're impoverished. You're morally impoverished. You understand it? You can go to church on Sunday and listen to a sermon spoken in eloquent tones, eloquent ideas, and then go out on Monday and it's business as usual.
Right.
It ain't going to get it.
You know, now that we're on
you are not affluent. It's a false affluency.
I was going to bring up that, you know, now that we're on the topic, I mean, it's there is such an overwhelming ratio of propaganda now. And as, of course, with the NDAA, the extension of the Patriot Act, making propaganda virtually legal. The news, the information that is presented to the American people is, it doesn't even have to be, it can be almost virtually fabricated. And keeping people enslaved. Have you noticed this uptick? Have you seen? I mean, it's all over. Any available media has so much overtone to it that you don't know what is truth and what is outright lies.
It's not easy to get the information today, but let's look into this for a moment.
Sure.
You know, Goebbels in the Third Reich was a master propagandist. And they created a police state. America right now is a police state. Now we have the militarization of the police. Now we have people calling for militarized police in our schools. No longer just uniformed police. They want militarized police.
Right.
We saw it in Ferguson. The new enemy, Eddie Winters, the new enemy is the American people themselves.
Wow.
We are the enemy now. And they're going to dumb us down further and further. They're rewriting all the textbooks in Dallas, in Texas, where they produce the textbooks for the American people.
Of course.
Liberal arts, art training, this whole curricula in our universities is being downgraded. Pretty soon our institutions of higher learning are the last frontier in this country to be taken over and brought into the political line of the elite. They will become research institutions, art, theater, museums. They're going to pretty soon be digitalized and sold off somehow. I'm really afraid of it. Our libraries are already being closed down and digitalized. The digital industry selling their technology and the artifacts, the books being sold off, in some cases even destroyed. It's another earmark of the police state. Get rid of the artifacts, get rid of the actual original text.
Right.
make a simulacrum, make copies, digital copies. But the one thing that's going to backfire, and Marshall McLuhan wrote about this in the 1960s, is electronic media. And that includes digital information and the internet, because the overriding thrust of electronic media is decentralization.
Right.
A decentralization of information. And what that means is it's going to become harder and harder for a centralized elite to control the information. We can see it happening now. Reportage already faster than the media can report it with mobile phones.
Right.
People seeing an event occur, they're already reporting online on Twitter. People are tweeting about it before it could even get to Fox News. So that's going to backfire. Putting a cell phone in the hands of people around the world, that may be the factor where we can overtake the situation.
Right.
If we keep ourselves educated enough and not dumbed down enough. That takes education. So they got the guns, but we got the numbers. They got the corporations, but wait a minute. We do have the numbers. And the corporations, you know, hey, we need corporations. Sure. We need heavy industry. We need banking, but we need it to be handled properly.
Right.
And not abused. We need investment capital. I'm not saying we don't. I'm not saying we don't need a marketplace. We need one, but it has to be handled in a balanced way with a moral responsibility. That's all I'm saying.
Right.
And
Hey.
we're not doing that. There's abuse everywhere you look. Extreme, radical abuse, and it's being covered over. The thing is, I was really surprised. 2 years ago, the Presbyterian Church in the United States stood up and said, we condemn this invasion in Gaza. And I was shocked, man.
Right.
So you asked me if I see any positive signs or indicators. That's one. How did that happen? That affirms something right there. Something I wouldn't have expected in 100 years.
Right.
They didn't have to do that. They didn't win any friends in government by doing that. But people in that church, they took that position, and that's important. That is important. They saw through the hollow rhetoric, and they stood up for it, and they made that proclamation. You know, we all voted for Obama. Many of us did.
Right.
I'm totally disenchanted with his administration now. Not so much for domestic policy, you know, but he's become a war president.
In disguise.
With the promise, the trust has been broken. There's blood on his hands and on Michelle's hands. I don't know how they can sleep at night with the drone warfare. When they took out that Doctors Without Borders hospital in Afghanistan
Right.
about 3 weeks ago. When everybody on all sides knew where that hospital was, they knew the coordinates. The American drones took it out, and American bombers. It's evil, man. It's total, unbridled evil, and the rest of the world can see it. You don't see it so much in this country. That shit flies by every day.
Right.
On the news. We're numb, man. We're numb over here. We don't have a sensitivity. Nobody feels anything. But you can, from my position, from my viewpoint, my purview in another part of the world, a high level of culture, other parts of the world, Western Europe, for example, parts of the Orient, they can look in and see us. I mean, sure, Europe has had its dark chapters.
Sure.
America's is an extension of Europe. But the situation is different today. Europe is fed up with unjustified war. They're afraid of it. They don't want to deal with it. They don't want it. They don't want to send troops. They don't want NATO breathing down their neck.
Right. And with this what you're saying, a lot of people in our country right now are so polarized and are so divided, and the things that we're talking about today, it challenges people's realities, and people are dismissive when you offer a alternate reality, alternate information that they've been fed, and they will dismiss you by using phrases like conspiracy theorist and phrases of this. Have you ran into this opposition when getting into these types of conversations?
Of course, people I went to high school with.
Sure.
My friends in Arkansas. I grew up in Arkansas in the backwoods. Okay, they don't like the Obama administration, but for precisely the opposite reason that I dislike it today. It's totally different. They work against their own interests. Their thinking is against, now the Republicans in Arkansas are back in the governor's mansion. They've taken all the medical benefits away from the elderly. And these people in Arkansas, my former classmates, they're not even cognizant of that.
Right.
I don't understand it. They vote for those people who will take their jobs away just so they can keep their guns. That's all they care about.
Right.
If they can have those guns mounted in the rack of their pickup truck, only thing they care about. They don't care about medical care. They don't care about medical insurance. They don't want medical insurance. When they have a problem, they either don't go to the doctor or they pay for it, or they go to the hospital and they don't pay for it. And that's the way they work.
Right.
They vote against their best interest. They're dumbed down, baby. And they don't want to hear it. And I tell them my point of view. Okay, they don't have to accept it, but I express it. And they won't stop me from doing that. And I do it in a cordial way because I don't want to say, hey, you're wrong or you're this or you're that.
Right.
I don't talk to people like that. They will say, well, I'm looking at it in kind of a different way. I'm looking at it over here. What do you think about this in terms of your mother and your father? They're elderly now. They just got their benefits taken away here in Arkansas, in your own state. What about the gun control over here? We just had an awful massacre over here in the high school about 15 miles from where you live. These kids don't know how to handle guns. They're mentally deranged. The new generation you're bringing up, there's a lot of psychos. What do you think about that?
Right.
You ever think about it? Oh, we need a gun to protect ourselves. If someone goes berserk in Walmart, we need a gun to protect him. We'll shoot back. I says, man, do you really think you're going to outdraw somebody that walks in there with an automatic weapon and is completely berserk? You think you're going to have time to do something? You might, but the big problem is this person that ran amok has a high caliber automatic weapon that shouldn't be in his hands. He shouldn't be able to get his hands on it. That's my view, okay?
Right.
So that's what I say. Just my position. They look at it in a different way. That's an example. That's all.
Sure.
But, we can go through now in today's world, rock and roll, jazz before that, other forms of music were liberating in one aspect. One aspect of the music was a liberating principle in the 1950s.
Right.
In the 1960s, revolution was tied in with music. There's always been a kind of a symbiosis. But today, our music really has to do more. It's not serving that anymore.
Right.
It's not the generation we have now outside of the Occupy movement is all night in discos and DJs playing. We need release, we need entertainment.
Sure.
But the connection between the underground music, the music that we once had, and the alternative culture is pretty much lost nowadays. And so I feel impelled to express the quality of our life and our outlook in the music that I record and play and do on stage.
Right.
It's not just a message, but a message is part of it. That's a fact.
It's almost as to say it's almost more important now than it's ever been.
In a sense, yeah, because people aren't really listening anymore.
Right.
The great massive youth movements were in the 1960s. People were really listening, and the country was totally divided in the 1960s.
Right.
And we were on the verge of a revolution. And on the other hand, one has to be careful with revolution because you sacrifice a lot with a revolution. It's not just we're moving to a new level if we win this revolution. We're moving to a new way of doing things, a new way of we're going to have these wonderful new freedoms, and we're going to put the past behind us. Well, you do that in part, but you also sacrifice certain things from the past that maybe you'll regret later, that
right.
you lost and you can never retrieve. So one has to be careful in revolution. And what you discard and what you carry forward. There's a certain part of our social fabric that can be lost in revolution. There's a certain look at the revolution in Cuba. Look at the revolution in Russia, for example.
Right.
Look at the French Revolution. There were excesses. I don't think religion should be censored. People want to practice that.
Right.
But in Russia, at the time of the revolution, all the churches were sacked and burned. In Cuba and in Russia, the church was only tolerated. I'm not a churchgoer,
sure.
but I think people have a right to worship as long as they don't engage in human sacrifice and which has existed in every culture, by the way. Engage in psychological and physical aggression. So that's one thing. That's one example. Other little things like social dancing, for instance. After the revolution in the 60s, people didn't dance in an embrace anymore.
Right.
That whole idea of dancing in an embrace was lost. It was a kind of free form, and even the hully-gully, the shag, all the rock and roll dances, they disappeared. So it's just funny little things like that.
Sure.
So you just have to watch what you want to move forward with and what you want to carry forward and what you want to discard.
Right. It feels like you're bringing into the higher consciousness, awareness, being able to. I think it takes a lot of being humble to realize and see the world in that perspective, because you have to take a step backwards to really analyze and look at the history and look at what's going on in the present time. And it just as such an inspiration to speak with you about these particular topics and to get your perspective and your point of view and just a general privilege. Tav, I know we're gonna wrap it up in a few minutes, and I wanted to ask you, continuing with this conversation, you touched up on something that was a delicate topic. You talked about things of human sacrifice and things of that has existed in a lot of cultures. There's a lot of, dare I say, a demonic or occultish undertones that have been existed in the United States history. Are you clued into, aware of some of that? And what are your thoughts about how this relationship with ancient government in the United States and sort of these kind of a cult or worship, these kinds of themes? Do you see a connection?
Oh, I don't know. There's all kinds of theories regarding connections like that with leadership and
Sure.
cults. I mean, there's always going to be cults and sects and, politically, occult and so on and so on. That's just kind of built in.
Sure.
But we have to be careful of is racism, lynchings, burnings, flayings, tarrings.
Of course.
That's going on every day, just like it was. My book on Memphis, it's not a rock and roll book,
Right.
particularly. Rock and roll doesn't come in until chapter 13. This book starts before the Civil War.
Right.
It starts when there were just French trappers on the Mississippi, where Memphis stands now. It starts way, way back because, like you said, you have to look back in time to understand where we are today. And to tell the story of Memphis and all that it means, you had to go back to the origins, and that's what I did. And it was a massive undertaking. It was a massive undertaking to put that book together.
Yeah.
It took 3 years, but I did it. Anyway, so, we're, in a sense, you could equate the Trayvon Martin with a kind of human sacrifice.
Sure.
In a sense, not ritualistic, not done by priests of a cult, but on the other hand, this man could certainly be considered a martyr,
Right.
an unwilling one, a inconvenient one, but certainly a symbol of the sacrifice that is being made in this country,
Right.
that has, under the police state in which we now live. And people think they're being protected. They're not protected. These police we have are our oppressors, in large part. And there are some police who are dedicated and who stand for everything they took an oath to uphold.
Right.
They're in the minority. They're in the minority. Hey, we all know it's not an easy job, but that job is being abused, and we're being militarized in this country against our own population for one reason, and that's for economic profit
Right.
by the elite. There's no other explanation. In every means possible, sticking someone like Trump in the presidency, he stands every chance to win, somebody will be behind him pulling the strings big time if he
Of
gets
course.
in and leads this country.
Connected to a bank somewhere.
And, we can sing a song and we can go down this merry trail and sing about our lives, and we're going to do that. And we're going to celebrate our music, and we're going to celebrate beauty and art and all. But we got to look at the whole picture. That's
Sure.
all I'm saying. And
course.
part of it's what we had to talk about today, because it's not being talked about enough, and that's why I'm talking about it. I can sit back and we can talk about rock and roll, and we can talk about jazz, and we can talk about, Eric Dolphy and John Coltrane, and these are fabulous people and
Sure.
fabulous artists. But there's something more urgent right now. Right now, there's more urgency that has to be talked about, and this is what we're talking about today.
I agree, and Tav, I gotta thank you so much for being
All right, Ed.
for spending this time with us and getting and going deep with us, and actually being a brave person and speaking about this on air, and I can't thank you enough. And just one more thing, the the book is out in stores. Where can everyone get it?
Well, an Iconography of Chance is available at bookstores around the country. They don't have it, they can order it. Barnes & Noble has it. It's on the Barnes & Noble website. It's on the Amazon website. It's up there right now.
Of course.
Just go there right now. If your bookstore doesn't have it, or they're unwilling to order it for you, you can have it in the mail, in your mailbox in 2 days.
And of course the new record Command Performance is out as well. I just want to thank you once again, Tav, for
That's
joining
out
us.
on Amazon. Barnes & Noble also carries the record. You can go to Darla Distribution online and order it directly from the distributor. Any way you want to get it, that record, Command Performance, just go online. You can buy it. You can download it. You can have it sent to your mailbox. Any way you want to have it delivered, it's there. You don't have to look too far to get Command Performance.
I love it. Thank you so much,
And
Tav.
on behalf of the Panther Burns, the unapproachable Panther Burns, the last steam engine train that don't do nothing but run and blow. On the boat of Mike Watt here, we're traveling with Toby Dammit on Highway 5 back down to Southern California. And then I'm flying out to Arkansas next week.
Wow.
Till we meet again, Eddie. Happy trails.
Happy trails and safe travels, my friend. Thank you so much.
Adios.
Take care, baby. Thank you. There it is. Tav Falco is our guest. Absolutely spellbinding.